And in 2012, it was moved from the other side to this side. And the manner in which they did it, let's just say, a rather unconventional. Now, there's lots of old family homes in Winter Park. The one up here on the right is the Sinclair House. If that name sounds familiar, Sinclair was an oil company, and this was the family's winter lodge. The Sinclair Oil Company had a dinosaur on the logo, if you remember that. Now, in front of us is a little canal. It started out as a creek, and it was dug out by the lumber industry so that they could float logs through here over to the sawmill on the next lake over. Little diving duck. Now at the sawmill, they had a rail line that came in, the dinky rail line, so they could process the logs, put them on the railroad carts, and then ship them out to Orlando. Live oaks, southern pines, and cypress trees were the trees that they were floating through these canals. These are cypress knees over here on the left bank. That is the above ground root system for the cypress trees. How pretty is this right here?
Amazing.
Really nice. Gorgeous.
Qué divino, ¿no?
I'm keeping my eyes open for the owl. There's lots of barn owls that like to live in
Hay
here.
búhos, dice. Hay que ver los búhos. Y mira las
See if I
orquídeas.
can find one.
Hay orquídeas. Yes, please, I wanna see an owl. Quiero ver un búho. Dice que hay búhos. Hay que estar pendientes.
All right, if everybody could just kind of watch their head here. Keep your hands inside. Lower your head down.
Yo soy cabezón.
If you look down, you can see the bottom. The lakes are crystal clear spring water, so they're great for recreating in, whether you're boating, kayaking, paddleboarding, water skiing, wakeboarding, whatever your water sport of choice is.
Sí, debe ser. Por el lago, claro, el lago hace mucho mosquito. Mira, ¿qué será eso?
Looks like a small alligator up here on the shore in the bushes down low. Alligator, it's a statue of an alligator. Oh, that's Jeremiah. He's a bullfrog. He's a good friend of mine. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Bum, bum, bum. Was a good friend of mine. Bum, bum, bum. Now, Rollins College over here on the right, and you can see the Knowles Chapel right here popping up into view. The chapel is open to the public, and if you go there, you can get a great view of Lake Osceola and Lake Virginia by going up on the second floor. Now there's a little canal here that leads to another lake, Lake Mizell. And Mizell runs behind this piece of property here, creating the Genius Peninsula. Now this home was built in 1927, and it's called the Martin Music Hall. Originally it was the Winter Park Businessmen's Club, but it was shortly sold after that to Rollins College, and it remained in their possession up until the 1970s. Now about 5 years ago, they expanded that property, adding the left and the right wings to it. When they did that, they also tore up all the grass and put down AstroTurf. AstroTurf doesn't require fertilizer. Fertilizer is full of nitrogen, and nitrogen is about the worst thing you can put into a spring lake. It makes algae grow. Now these 4 homes have Lake Mizell right on the other side, which is due east. And on this side, due west, is Lake Virginia. So that means every morning those 4 houses get a sunrise on their back patio, and then every evening they get a sunset on this patio. You know what they say, location, location, location. Now the next home is called Windsong, and this big piece of property here is actually a wilderness tract. This is called the Genius Reserve, and it's closed to the public. In Winter Park, we have a lot of peacocks that wander around freely. Now, during the daytime, they'll wander throughout the neighborhoods, but at night, the majority of them come back here to the Genius Reserve, and this is where they roost overnight. Now, the city keeps this closed to the public, but once a year, they open it up for a 5K that's called Run Through the Trees. Now, this home right here is called Windsong, and this is where the geniuses live. Dr. Genius was one of the first doctors in Winter Park, and his wife was the daughter of Mr. Morse, who was a founder of Winter Park. Now, they are credited with bringing the first peacocks into Winter Park in 1940. They went to India on their honeymoon, and they brought back the original first 2. Now there's close to 200, and they live over there in Genius Reserve. All right, let's go see Rollins College.
Transparente, mira, transparente el agua. Dice que estamos sobre 20. Y el conductor.
4 hombres y todas las mujeres.
Rollins campus over here, established in 1885, so one of the oldest schools in Florida, the 4th oldest if you're actually counting. Established just 5 years after Winter Park was incorporated, they've both been linked historically ever since their inceptions. A relatively small school, Rollins only has about 1,900 undergraduate students and about 1,000 graduate students, mostly known for their international business, liberal arts program, and also their master's program. That guy is called the Anahinga, and if you'll notice, he has trouble flying because his wings are full of water. The Anahinga's superpower is that he swims underwater just like a fish, but before he can fly, he has to dry his wings off. So that's why you see him struggling to get up in the air.
Mira, ese barco está más vacío.
No charge. Now, if you see the people sitting right there, there's actually a walking trail there that's open to the public. It's where the old rail line was that came around the lake from Orlando before stopping at the sawmill. When they closed the sawmill, they pulled up those rails and they made this beautiful walking trail. It's open to the public and there's free parking over at Dinky Dock Park. This is also a great place to watch the sunset in Winter Park. 7:30 p.m. tonight.
A las 7:30 dice que se mete el sol y es el mejor lugar para venir a ver. Mira que te dije que hay cosas muy lindas para hacer.
Now this dock is used by the water ski team, but also students taking water-based electives like canoeing and sailing.
Mira el sailing
The building
de los,
behind it
de
is
los
called the
estudiantes de la
Cornell
universidad
Fine Arts
pueden usar
Museum,
eso.
and this is open to the public
It's a
along
Rollins
with the
College.
chapel and the student cafeteria.
Mira, allá hay una cafetería.
All right. I was fortunate to teach at Rollins for about 10 years. I was their paddleboard coach, and I can tell you Rollins is a great school, whether you're an employee or a student. Lots of fun, rich traditions there. So this is where the sawmill is located. Logs come floating in through the canals, get processed at the sawmill, and then shipped right out on the railway system called Dinky Rail Lines. When they closed the sawmill, condemned the property, it was the Rotary Club of Rollins of Winter Park that bought the property and turned it into this park here. That first dock is a fishing dock, and that's what those guys are doing. Where that blue ball area is a designated swimming area. These waters are spring fed and the water quality is awesome. They actually test the water
wow.
every week to make sure that none of the values are out of whack. And if they are, they post it up on those green signs there. Now these are public lakes, and so this is the public access right here. If you have a boat with a motor,
Ahí
you can
puedes
put it in
bañarte
right here and explore
en
the
esa
chain of
área,
lakes.
te puedes bañar
There's a
del agua.
small daily fee to
Y como
use the
esta-
ramps.
este lago es,
Now the next
alimentado
building
por
is more
aguas,
student housing,
vertientes.
and where the blue chairs are, that is what the students call the study dock. It's more like a suntan dock,
Pero dice
but
que cada
nonetheless,
semana hacen
it sits
exámenes
next
del
to
agua
the
y te
president's
ponen
house.
si hay algo
So
raro,
this
ponen ahí
beautiful
letreros
home right
para
here,
que
this is
no
one
te
of the
metas si
perks
es
of
que algo
being the
está mal.
Rollins president, is this home comes with the job title. Now, when I was teaching my class, I didn't know I had the president's daughter as one of my students until one day we were paddling by here and she turned and announced to the class, "Hey guys, my dad's out of town. Who wants to see the house?" Now, before I could say that's not a good idea, all the kids pulled up in there. Now, nothing bad happened. We got a little bit of water on the floor, and I nervously wiped it up and got out of there as fast as I could. But the funnier part is there was a lady here a couple of weeks ago, and she leaned in and she goes, "Is this why you're driving boats now?" And I was like, "No, it was actually COVID." But anyway, on the next two lakes, we'll see some beautiful homes that were designed by Winter Park's favorite architect, James Gamble Rogers. Now, he came to Winter Park in the early 1920s, and he designed and built homes all the way up until the 1960s. Now, there's a lot of them dotted around the Winter Park inside the city, but their big ones are located on the water. So we'll go see a couple of those on the next two lakes. Now, the trees that they were floating through here, the live oak, this is a live oak over here on the right. And you can see it's covered in the Spanish moss. That's the gray stuff that's hanging down. Now, it's not Spanish or moss, but it's an air plant. So it gets all of its nutrients from the air. It's not harmful to the tree per se.
Mira, esta es banana. Oh, no vamos a ver un búho, parece que no está.
This is bougainvillea over here you see blooming up here in that fuchsia color.
Son
Really
bugambillas.
pretty plant, but it has big thorns on it, so you don't want to touch that. And lowering our heads one more time. So on this side, there's a live oak, and the Winter Park arborist estimates this tree at over 350 years old.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at its branches, they reach out across the canal to the other species that was lumbered. This one is the southern pine, and this tree is estimated at 150 years old right here. So both of those survivors from that timber timeline.
Ese tiene 300.
All right, on to Lake Osceola, named for the Seminole Indian chief, Chief Osceola. He had a large encampment on this northern shore prior to Winter Park becoming incorporated.
Mira la casita allá en el lago.
Now, if you look at the boat docks over here, you'll see one that looks a little bit different than all the other boat docks out here. And this little twin boathouse actually is a U.S. historic site. You can see that it has a tag on the dock. Now, the home behind it is called the Brewer Estate, and originally it started out as a small 2-bedroom home. Mr. Brewer asked our friend Mr. Rogers to redesign it as a replica of his New York home. The reason why? Mrs. Brewer didn't want to move to swampy Florida, so like a good husband, he tried to bribe her and said, "Honey, I'll build you the same house you have in New York here in Winter Park." So the home behind the little boathouse is called the Brewer Estate, or the Palms. And it started as a 2-bedroom home, redesigned now into 8 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, and the second floor is a ballroom. Finished in 1927, it's also spun around. So you're looking at the front of the house instead of the back of the house. All the other homes, the access road leads to the front of the house. If you look at this one right here, the public road comes right here to the front of their house, and then their lakefront property is on the other side. That house, the Brewer Estate, is the only one where they spun it around, so the front of the house faces the lake for everyone to see. Some little birdhouses over here on the right. They're home to the purple martin, a migratory bird. It's really small, but they come yearly, every year, and the homeowners love them because they're known for their appetite of mosquitoes. That's the purple martin birdhouses. Architect friend James started designing in the early 1920s, but this home he did in the mid-60s. So he had been at it for over 4 decades when he got to this project. This home is known as the Rich Estate. That was the last name of the people who commissioned them. And they were looking to maximize their water views. So by build and placement, James tried to do that. This location is a little peninsula that juts out into Osceola, and the build style he used is called Bermuda. If you'll notice, all the windows are extra large bay style, and what he was trying to do by placement and build is give them wraparound views of Lake Osceola. Now, up until about 8 years ago, there was no one else located on this peninsula. They sold off a chunk of this land, and now there's a big house on the other side. But prior to that, you could look out the back of the house and you would see Lake Osceola as well. That's the Rich Estate by James Campbell Rogers. Is another old logging canal. This one is the crown jewel of the whole tour. It's called Venetian Canal, and it'll take us to our third lake, Maitland, which is the largest. But bookending our canal, the home on the left, the White House, designed by our friend James Campbell in the 1950s, is around 5,000 square feet. The one on the other side of the canal with the orange roof was designed in the late 1950s, and it's around 6,000 square feet. But the one over here has been under process for the last 4 years, and this one is 41,000 square feet. Imagine that, 7 of those homes would fit inside of this one. But if you look closely, there's some statues in the backyard. There's one on the left. Can you guys see the life-size one there?
Oh yeah, un elefante.
What is it?
The elephant.
Elephant. Give that guy a Fox Day t-shirt. Now, if you track a little bit to the right, there's another statue. It's a blackbird.
Oh,
and that one is
yeah.
by that trash can looking thing. The blackbird is done by Colombian artist Botero.
Oh, Botero.
Oh, everybody knows?
Yeah,
Ah, wow, you guys are listening.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So anyway, it was funny because it was under a blue tarp for about 3 months, and people would guess, like, what is it? And the one lady goes, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And I was like, no, it's definitely not the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. But anyway, beautiful over there, the blackbird.
Y como medio rechoncho, porque dice que Botero hacía estructuras de rechonchitas.
Did I say it right? Botero.
Botero, yeah.
Botero. You gotta roll that R. Now, these folks also have a statue in their backyard.
Oh, yeah.
This one is called Southern Assets. Okay, that was a joke.
Yeah.
Nobody laughed. All I heard were crickets. Chirp, 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 chirp. All right. This will take us over to Maitland. There are some bushes that lean in, so please try to keep your hands inside. I don't want anybody to get poked.
Mira esta. Este es de ese famoso Gambo, que era un arquitecto. Él construyó la mayoría de estas casas.
The homeowners maintain the banks along the side, and the city maintains this bunker system you see along the edge of the canal. Now this homeowner on the right, this is pretty lush. They got a little bit of everything over here, but they've also been grafting orchids onto their cypress trees up
Oh,
here.
nice.
Along with the orchids, they've also been grafting small bears onto the tree as well. Oop. there throwing some heart hands at us. Little Mickey.
Qué lindos túneles, ¿no? De árboles. Cachuta. Qué lindo esto.
Gator.
Mira ese halcón. Qué hermoso. Mira esa flor, qué bonita. No la había visto. Mira un vivero. Este lago que estamos yendo se llama Maitland, dice que es el más grande.
All right, at the end of this canal, you can see there's a cypress tree, and it's growing right in the water. Cypress trees are unique that they can grow on the land or in the water, but always surrounded by those above ground root system nearby the cypress knees.
Oh,
This
wow.
is Lake
Cierto,
Bateman.
mira un montón de árboles en medio del agua. Dice que son los cypress estos que crecen en el agua.
And this first building here is called the Bradley Boathouse. It's another Rollins property. This one is used by the crew team. The top half is a gymnasium. There's somebody working out up there. And then the bottom, the doors lift open and they can walk out those really long crew boats.
Mira ese árbol.
They sit right next to one of the most prettiest parks in Winter Park. This is called Kraft Azalea Gardens. Another great place to watch the sunset. You'll see there's lots of benches set up that face towards the west.
Orlando es muy lindo para ver el sol meterse.
There's also this really awesome photography spot right here. This is called an etcetera, which is Greek for, hello, happy Winter Park people, which is Greek for 6-column structure or good place to take a picture and ride your skateboard. This is Kraft Azalea Gardens. Lots of parking, beautiful park. great hotels. The Seminoles were located on Lake Osceola and they burned down. But the Alabama over here was converted to private condominiums in 1977. But in its heyday, this was a favorite retreat for actors and actresses, playwrights and authors. The author of Gone with the Wind, Margaret Mitchell, loved to come stay at the Alabama during the winter time. Now this is probably the prettiest backyard in Winter Park. People
Wow.
say it has a very Disney-esque appeal, but the home was built in 1927 and it features that beautiful red barrel tile on all the buildings. Guest house, pool house, boat house, and the main house, all with that beautiful red barrel tile. Now the home next to it,
Qué
almost as
hermoso,
old.
mira.
This one built in 1930,
casarse.
totally different style. And then the rest of these are modern tear down and rebuilds. Whee!
Al final fue un paseo arquitectónico para mí, ¿ah? Me encanta, pero a mí me encanta. A mí me gusta esto.
Well, that last one looked like a villa out of Tuscany. This one looks like a Mediterranean villa, but the skippers call it the Tom Hanks house. He rented it about 20 years ago. They were in town working with HBO on a documentary called From Earth to the Moon. Now, when that production wrapped up, the house that was right here became available for sale. These folks bought it, knocked it down, and what you see here is the matching pool home to the main house. If you
Oh,
look, the
yeah.
arches, the chimney, and the roof are all the same design as the big house. But maybe more interesting than the Tom Hanks house is this little bridge over here.
Nice.
This bridge leads onto an island that has some of the most exclusive
Esa es una
properties in
isla.
Winter Park.
Y ese
That's the
puente
only
lo
way
une
on and
para entrar a esa
off
isla.
the Isle of Sicily. Around 13 acres in size, and it has
Sicilia, sí.
12 estate homes, all about the size of this one.
Dos
This is
casas.
where our friend James Gamble Rogers built his very first home for him and his wife, using it as a showcase, bringing people over to the Isle of Sicily to see his house and then the designs that he could draw for them. The Isle of Sicily in Winter Park. Here's another cypress tree. You can see a few of them growing out here in the middle of the water. Now this one, we call it the Charlie Brown tree because you can see it's got some ornaments on it. There's also an osprey nest on the top, and there's Mama Osprey guarding that nest. Now the ornaments were originally hung by one of our drivers, and after he passed, we wanted to keep that tradition going, but we're too lazy to take the decorations down. So they stay up year round, and we just call it the Charlie Brown tree in honor of our friend Charlie West. All right, that's the Charlie Brown tree. We're gonna go to the other side and see what we call the old and the new. I'm waiting for my elders. Come on, Mr. Wendell.
Whoa. ¿Hizo frío? Mi amor. ¿Hizo fresquito?
this side, I mentioned we call it the old and the new. The new one is behind the trees that you can't see too good. That is the former home of Horace Grant, a professional basketball player that came down to Orlando. Now, most professional athletes, when they come to Orlando, they go to South Orlando, where Arnold Palmer has a very exclusive neighborhood. Think Tiger Woods, Shaquille O'Neal. But Horace built his home here right in the heart of Winter Park, and at the time, it was the largest at 22,000 square feet. Now, the home next to it is the old, and this one, again, designed by our friend James Gamble Rogers, but for the Packard family. They manufactured automobiles in the USA for a while, and this was the family's winter lodge, the Packard House, designed by James Gamble Rogers in 1933. All right.
No, dice que los de Shaquille O'Neal, muchos basquetbolistas viven en el sur de Orlando. Este es el único Grant que jugó aquí en el Orlando Magic, que se construyó una casa acá. O no sé si jugó aquí, es un jugador que se llama Grant. ¿Conoces? Horace Grant.
Looks like some crew team members getting ready to go out and practice a little bit.
¿Qué tipo? ¿Es kayak?
Look how pretty this is coming in here.
Yeah.
That park was called Kraft Azalea Gardens, if you guys were interested in visiting that later. You guys want to race? No? Yeah. They'd probably lose.
Ese deporte es bien lindo.
All right, we're going to head back into Venetian Canal. And on the other side, we have Fred Rogers' house. Not related to James Gamble, but he was the children's television host, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Also an alumni graduate, Winter Park resident, and all around America's nice guy. Have you guys heard of Mr. Rogers? No? Okay. All right, well, no problemo. The house we're going to see was his collegiate home, and his family actually came from old money. His grandfather was one of the inventors of RCA, which would later go on to become NBC TV. So when you see the Mr. Rogers house, it's not your normal college kid hangout house. But the other thing I get asked about frequently is flooding and the hurricanes that we have. Here in Winter Park, the inner part of Florida, Central Florida, usually by the time the storms get to us, they've been downgraded significantly. But 2 years ago, we had a hurricane, Hurricane Ian, and it flooded pretty much all of Florida to some degree or another. Now there's a little boathouse right here on the right, and if you look closely, you can see the high water mark from Hurricane Ian.
Dice cuando
So
vino
we
el
were
huracán
about
Ian,
2.5,
el agua
3
llegó
feet
al nivel donde
over
está
the
esa
top
línea,
of our
¿ves?
bunkers,
Mira,
and it
ahí,
took the water about 2 months
hasta ahí
before it
llegó el
worked
agua.
its way down.
Mira,
After that,
este es
we
un
could
registro
fit
hasta
back
donde llegó el
again
agua.
underneath the bridges safely. All right.
bien angostito esto, ¿no?
Sí.
All these beautiful trees on the left are the live oak trees. And you can see they have some resurrection fern on their top limbs like this one does here. And when that gets rainwater on it, it lights up green. So real pretty after a rainstorm in Winter Park. Resurrection fern.
¿Qué hora ya es?
Se te va a terminar la vida.
No, yo lo voy a bajar a YouTube y ya. Aquí está. Nah, no pasa nada. Puede ser. ¿Qué? ¿Que haga un live en TikTok? Nah.
Hola, estamos aquí, que no sé
¿De qué es esto? Mira. ¿Árbol de qué?
Níspero.
No, creo que es guayaba, Eli.
¿Qué va a ser guayaba, Dani? ¿Cómo crees que
¿Qué
va a
es
ser?
níspero?
Níspero.
Pero cuán grande es.
So the Fred Rogers house is located over here on the right. If you guys see this boat dock that has the pontoon boat in it, the house right behind there is where he lived while he attended Rollins College. This is called an English style estate. It's red brick with green ivy on the exterior. There's 8 bedrooms in the main house and then 4 bedrooms in this separate guest house. The guest house is right behind this boathouse, so that is the Mr. Rogers estate of Winter Park. All right, let's go see the Capon house. So when we started our trip, we were over there by the Pelagic Gardens, and I showed you the Capon House. Up on top of this hill is where the Capon House came from. If you see that gray home with the white trim, that was the original location. In 2012, the Preservation Society came in and cut the original house in half, brought it down that hill on a roller system, and then loaded it onto a barge and shipped it over to the other side of the lake. They came back and got the other half, and then it took craftsmen about a year to stitch those two together. But if you go over there today and you go inside, you can't even tell that it was cut in half, rolled down a hill, put on a barge, and shipped across the lake. Whee! Well, that's about it, folks. We're back to our little boat dock. We've been here since 1938, so one of the longest continuous operating attractions in Florida, somewhere on that top 10 list. But we're here every day but Christmas, so anytime you guys are in town in Winter Park and wanting a boat ride, come on down to the Scenic Boat Ride. All the skippers love to go out on the lake and talk about the history of Winter Park. Well, you guys have been great, and so have I. I hope you... That usually kills. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the Winter Park Scenic